Hi everyone, my name is Michaela Zamora Villarreal and I am the first reporter of Group 2, Chapter 3, Lesson 1 to 4. Introduction. The history of art is the history of any activities by human in visual form, for aesthetic or for communication purposes, expressing ideas and emotions. The visual art has been classified in diverse way, from medieval distinction between liberal arts and mechanical arts to modern distinction between fine arts and applied arts. Let's discuss first the medieval distinction. Liberal arts. Liberal arts is a degree that includes the study of history, literature, writing, philosophy, sociology, psychology, creative arts, and more. These programs help formulate compelling arguments, communicate well, and solve problems. Mechanical art. Mechanical art were intended as complement to liberal arts, and it consists of weaving, blacksmithing, war, navigation, agriculture, hunting, and medicine. Next is we have modern distinction. Fine art. Fine art is considered to have been created primarily for aesthetic and intellectual purposes and judged for its beauty and meaningfulness. Applied art. Applied art are created with specific purposes in mind. This type of art can be found in various mediums, such as advertising or commercial.
Hello everyone. By the way, I'm Lara Michelle. My report is continuous to reporting Miss Villarreal. So, the old form of artistic expression, just as fashion and gastronomy. So, fashion. Fashion is a reflection of social, economic, political, and cultural change. It expresses modernity, symbolizing the spirit of the time. So, gastronomy. Gastronomy is the science that study the presentation, cooking, and presentation of local flavor as well as their cultural impact. So, new modes of expressions are being considered as art, as video, computer art, performance, advertising, and television and video games. So, art historical scholarship depends greatly on the board experience, intuitive judgment, and critical sensitivity of scholar in making correct attribution. An extensive knowledge of the historical context in which an artist's life and work is also necessary, as well as empathy with understanding of particular artist's ideas, experience, and insight.
Lesson 1: Art History and Development. The study of art is the study of various forms of art that are related to other aspects, such as painting, sculpture, and architecture. It involves various actions such as recognizing, interpreting, analyzing, and understanding the meaning of art. In the 19th century, artists like Jacob Burckhardt and German idealists like Alois Riel and Heinrich Wölfflin contribute significantly to the study of art as an academic discipline. Their contributions help build a structured approach to systematic analysis, their cultural significance, and its application over time. The study of art aims to understand culture and human nature through the analysis of artifacts and their context. Metal art, also known as cave paintings, are ancient lithic drawings that were created over thousands of years. These paintings, dating back to the Paleolithic period, were created over 40,000 years ago and were widely admired worldwide. The oldest cave painting, Ababoy Damu, dates back 35,400 years and was found in Timponsing Cave in Indonesia. All these cave paintings with figures were found in Europe during the Oligocene period, ranging from 30,000 to 32,000 years, and were found in caves like Chubut Cave in France and Coleboia Cave in Romania. These cave paintings provide a unique perspective on the history and culture of ancient people using animals as a common patterns and essentials made from pigments in the ground. Egyptian art. Over 200 years ago, Egypt was one of the most prosperous nations in ancient world. Knowledge about its history was largely derived time, Egypt became a center of knowledge and culture, its ancient civilizations influencing its knowledge and culture. The Narmer palette, also known as the Great Hierakonpolis palette, is an ancient Egyptian artifact from early dynastic period. It is one of the most important and valuable artifacts in Egypt and is currently housed in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. The Narmer palette is significant because it represents the division of Upper and Lower Egypt by King Narmer, also known as a Menes. Symbolism of the palette consists of two regions to form a centralized city. The Great Pyramid of Giza is one of the oldest pyramids in the world, measuring 146.6 meters and the tallest pyramid in the world. It is made of a large limestone and granite block. The pyramid showcases the skills of ancient Egyptians in architecture and engineering, serving as a testament to their achievements and continues to serve as a reminder of history and civilization. Known for its architectural design, features terraces or pyramids on ramps and colonnades. It combines Egyptian classical elements with more elegant features. The Temple of Deir el-Bahari is a significant site in Egypt's history, dating back to the reign of Reina Hatshepsut and the New Kingdom period. It is a popular tourist destination and a significant site in Egypt's archaeology. Greek artists such as Phidias, Polycletus, Praxiteles, Scopas, and Lysippus use anatomical and perspective to depict human bodies. Unlike other classical artists who survived due to the use of metal and clay, these artists aim for a realistic and naturalistic approach to their work. They also use their skills to depict natural position and life expression of the body. Greek artists were skilled in studying human anatomy, analyzing the characteristic of a person with dignity, and recognizing the size and proportion of the human body, which provided a better understanding of human behavior. They also had the ability to live their lives through the expression of the body and position of the human body, influencing the lives of the people around them. These artists were greatly appreciated for their contribution to Greek art and the influence of other artists in their field. Classical Greek pottery, traditionally made daily, is a significant part of a Filipino culture. People create small terracotta figurines for various purposes such as gods, inanimate objects, and animal figures. Many types of pottery such as pottery bowls, vases, baskets are made from religious and mythological materials, making them more beautiful and practical over time. The art of Greek pottery often involves the use of natural materials and features such as patterns, order, perspective, proportion, and human-like features like drawings and paintings. And that's all. Thank you.
Good day everyone, I'm Char Alponce and I will be the one to discuss about the Japanese art. So first I'm gonna give an overview about Japanese art. Okay, so Japanese art is a diverse and captivating subject that encompasses a wide range of artistic styles, mediums, and tradition. It has a long and rich history that spans centuries, influenced by various cultural, religious, and historical factors. And that was the short overview about Japanese art. And later on, I will be the one to discuss their famous work and all their arts made. First, we have sculpture. Sculpture is a three-dimensional art form that involves creating physical objects by shaping or carving materials. And yeah, this is one of the most famous art made by the history. Maskin karon naa pa jud gihapon ning sculpture. Kanang pagcarving nato og mga materials, mga bato, mga wood, clay, mga metal o mga bisag unsa pa. And based on my sculptures, based on my studies, sculptures can be freestanding, meaning they are designed to be viewed from all angles, or they can be relief sculptures which are attached to a background surface. And I will show you some pictures of sculpture. Here, this is the pictures of sculptures. Very beautiful. And now, because our topic is all about Japanese art, so we have one example here of Japanese art which is made by clay. We have the Jomon clay. As you can say, this artwork is very unique. It's different from others. And this is the earliest sculpture in the art history. So, ang clay dye mo ang pinakauna nga gigamit na mga sangkap sa pag-sculpt nila. Ano siya, Jomon clay. And we have another artwork here made by Japanese. We have here it's like a Buddha, yes, because Japanese believe in Buddha. And the introduction of Buddhism to Japan in the 500s influenced sculpture techniques, styles, and subjects, and it is made of bronze. Bronze because of its values and awe-inspiring appearance. And one of the most impressive gilt bronze statues from this period is a 52-foot, 16-meter seated Buddha in the Todaiji temple in the city of Nara. So mao na yung picture, as you can see, dili ta kayo na dako kay picture naman siya, pero imagine 16 meters so taas juday kani siya. And then now let's continue our discussions, and the next one is we have paintings. Paintings are a fascinating form of art that have been around for centuries. They allow artists to express their creativity and emotions through the use of color, lines, and shapes on a canvas. Printing can range from realistic and detailed to abstract and experimental, offering a wide variety of styles and techniques. And we have one example of painting here made by Japanese people. We have the screen painting. So, mao ni siya ang picture. It is often thought of as one of the most characteristic forms of Japanese art. Painted screens were features of Japanese residential architecture as early as 700 years. And I will show you some different pictures of paintings here. Yan, muna sila yung mga example sa paintings. Dayon, kato kung ipagkita ninyo kaganihan na screen painting, mo to siya ang pinaka-famous nga artwork sa Japanese when it comes of painting. So, based in my observation, mas mostly biadjud sa mga painting is made by Japanese artists, o mga mas fluent sila when it comes on painting, and for me lang yun, and that's all about painting. So, and now let's move on and woodblock prints. Woodblocks were first used in Japan to reproduce religious texts and images. When we talk about woodblock print, it is a style of relief printing in which artists is used carved wooden blocks to press designs and onto textiles or paper. So mao ni siya ang example that is made by Japanese artists. Next, we have ceramics. Japan has one of the oldest ceramic tradition in the world. Earthenware vessels called jomon or cord mark, and this is the example of jomon or cord mark. As you can see, very unique from others. And we have the last one. Saan siya? Next we have the ukiyo-e. How to read this? This is a genre of Japanese art which is flourished from 17th through in 19th centuries. Its artists produce woodblock prints and paintings of such subjects as female beauties. By combining yuki for sadness and yu for life, we have yuki for life, and the word yukiyo or originally reflected to Buddhist concept of life as a transitory illusion. And next, we talk about the popular themes. Here we have a pictures of a floating world. The literal translation of ukiyo refers to the licensed brothel and theater district of Japan's major cities during the Edo period. This is the last one, my favorite one. We have the landscapes. So, when we talk about landscape, guys, Our landscape is an art. It is a genre of art that focuses on depicting natural scenery, meaning arts of the nature about siya sa atong mga nature, sa atong mga palibot, such as mga mountains, mga valleys, rivers, forest, and other elements of the natural environment. So, mas exciting ni siya, mas nindot magini kasagara, mas daghang ganahan if about a landscape na mga art. So, para po to sa ako ay. And for me, just my own perspective, this is one of the most artwork that I love because I really love to say and to see painting like this. And if it is all about the nature. So, and this is one of the most iconic of all. Okay, Yukio Prince, the Hokusai's a great wave of the coast of Kanagawas. And this is the picture. It's very beautiful as you can see. And then maura dito siya guys, and that's all. That was the end of my discussions, and again, once again, thank you so much.
Good day everyone, my name is Einstein Barkit. I am the next reporter. Let's proceed. The Roman arts and architecture. The Romans wanted their arts and architecture to be useful. They planned their cities and built bridges, aqueducts, public baths and marketplaces, apartment houses and harbors. When a Roman official ordered sculpture for a public square, he wanted it to tell the future generations of the Rome. So gusto sa taga-Roman na magamit ilang arts and architect sa ilang future generations sa taga-Rome. The Dam of Caesarea Metella in Rome is an ancient Roman structure that was constructed at the end of the Roman Republican period. So ang Dam of Caesarea Metella di ay kay kuan ni siya kanalugnanan ni sila sa taga-Roman sa ilang mga hari, general og senator og mga ilang mga kaliwat. In portraying their gods, the Greeks had been influenced by their ideas of form and beauty. Human sculptures were greatly influenced by the Greeks, but the Romans showed their skill and originality in portraits. They portrayed their emperors, general, and senators with a degree of realism unknown to the Greeks. Thinning hair, double chin and crooked noses, all the physical traits that make one person look different from another. So, ga-portrait di sila silang gods para may influence nila ilang beauty and sculpture sa Greeks. So this is the example of Roman structure. Statue of Jupiter, king of the gods. So the statue of Jupiter, king of the gods, was a famous representation of the Roman god Jupiter. So the statue of Jupiter, the king of the god, it was a colossal statue made of gold and ivory and was considered one of the most 7 wonders of the ancient world. Next is Roman painting achieved a high degree of naturalism through artists' understanding of perspective and use of light and shade. The Romans painted many charming scenes from nature and portraits of children and beautiful young men and women, religion to inspire their art. So this is an example of an Roman painting. So natin mga makita din na bata, laki ug bae. So nada mga wala sila mga sanina. Let's proceed. China landscape painting. China is one of the oldest continuous artistic traditions in the world. The beginnings of Chinese art can be traced to 5000 before Christ when Stone Age people made decorated objects of bone and pottery. So next, during the Sixth Dynasty period, people began to appreciate painting for its own beauty. They also began to write about art. So this is an example of an China landscape painting. So it is the 6th Dynasty period. Next is Chinese landscape painting. Many critics consider landscape to be the highest form of Chinese painting. The time from the Five Dynasties period to the Northern Song period is known as the Great Age of Chinese landscape. So, this is money ang landscape sa Chinese painting. Ambot. Next. Kibashi painting. In the late 80s and 90s, Chinese painters were increasingly exposed to Western cultures. The most beloved painter, Kibashi, he began his life as a poor peasant and became his famous work. So, this is his famous work, the depict flowers and a small animal. So, Kibashi painting mo ni siya ang famous work niya through painting. The Chinese were master of bronze, jade, and ceramics. Decorative objects made of materials are among China's greatest contributions to the world. Art, bronze, metal. Work is the greatest art form of China. So, ang Chinese daw kay master daw sila sa bronze, jade art, and ceramics. So maayo sila mo himo-himo ani na mga bato or unsa pa ni. So this is the example of ito. So this is an example of Chinese artwork. Bronze jar, Zhou Dynasty. So money so it is a bronze. So ano siya? Chinese bronze image. Wala naman na. Jade in ancient China. Jade is a hard, beautiful stone that was highly valued by the Chinese jade. Ornaments and sculpture are found at many early burial sites. So, makita daw ni nato sa burial sites. So, next. And last, for Xian Buddha statue, many critics believe that Tang Dynasty was the golden age of body sculpture. So, mga tao guys, thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Martin Serapin Barkit, and I am the Group 2 reporter and the first reporter of Lesson 2. The topic that I'm going to discuss is all about from the age of Renaissance to Realism. The Renaissance to Realism period is a time of great transition in art and literature. It began in the 40s. The Renaissance to Realism period is a time of great transition in art literature. It began in the 1400 with the emergence of the Renaissance, a period of great cultural and intellectual rebirth in Europe. During this time, artists and writers began to explore new ways to express the world around them in different ways. From the use of realism to more imaginative paintings of the Baroque period, from the realism of the 16th century to the Romantic of 19th century. The artists this period create a vast array of works that still resonate with us today. The Renaissance art. Renaissance art refers to the art created between the 14th and 16th centuries in the Europe during the Renaissance period. This art is characterized by its realistic representation of human form. It is used perspective and its focus on religious and classical terms. So, ang Renaissance art daw ay isang panahon ng kasaysayan ng Europa na nagmamarka ng paglipat mula sa Middle Age hanggang sa modernity at sumasaklaw sa ika-15 at ika-16 na siglo bilang karagdagan na pamatag at pagwawasto. Florence in the Renaissance. The Renaissance period in Florence was a period of great cultural and economic growth, marked by a flourishing of art, literature, and philosophy. Florence was the forefront of the Renaissance, and many of the leading figures in the movement, such as Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Botticelli, and were based in the city. So, ang Florence in the Renaissance daw ay isang lungsod sa Italia na naging sentro ng Renaissance sa Europa. Ang lungsod ay naging sentro ng kultura, sining, politika o reliyon na nagbibigay ng malaking impluwensya sa ibang bahagi ng mundo. Ang Renaissance ay isang panahon ng paglalaganap ng mga bagong ideya at diskarte sa edukasyon, sining at agrikultura. High Renaissance art. High Renaissance art is characterized by a focus on realistic figures, intense emotion, and precise attention to detail. The period saw the emergence of some of the most renowned artists in history, including Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael and Titian. So, ang High Renaissance art ay isang karaniwang koleksyon ng mga obra maestra na may pagsama-sama sa isang konseptong pang-estetika at pag-ideolohikal sa mga kontemporaryong Renaissance. Ang mga obra ng maestra na ito ay madalas na nagpapakita ng isang pagkakaroon ng tiyaga, kasanayan at katalinuhan na hindi nagagamit ng mga panahong sining. Renaissance art in practice. Renaissance art was a period of artistic innovation and experimentation in the Europe that began in the 1400 and latest until the early 1600. During this time, artists developed new techniques and ideas that lead to the development of the Renaissance style. Renaissance art in practice ay isa itong art na pinakikita ng mga artist noong panahon ng Renaissance. Ang mga Renaissance art ay mayroong malalim na pag-unawa sa kasaysayan, arkitektura at pagpapahalaga sa natural na kagandahan. Pinapahalaga nito ang pagkaisa ng tao lahat ng mga anyo sa sining at kultura. Ang mga Renaissance art ay naglalaman ng mga detalye at formal na abstraction at nagpapakita ito ng mas malalim na pag-unawa sa mga tema at simbolismo. Expansion and decline. The business cycle is characterized by the period of economic expansion and decline. During an expansion, economic activity grows, businesses are profitable, and employment decreases. It contrasts during a decline, economic activity contrasts. Business suffer closes and employment rises. So, expansion ng decline ay isa itong paglaki at pagbagsak ng mga proseso ng pagbabago sa isang sistema o organisasyon. Ang paglaki ay maaaring tumukoy sa pagtaas ng bilang ng mga tao o pag-unlad ng teknolohiya na nabilang ng nagdudulot ng positibong pagbabago sa isang organisasyon o komunidad. Ang pagbagsak naman ng maraming tumutukoy sa pagbawas ng bilang ng mga tao o pagkasira ng organisasyon o komunidad dahil sa kalamidad o kakulangan ng pinansyal. Mannerism art. The term Mannerism describes the style of the paintings and bronze sculpture on this tour, derived from the Italian maniera, meaning simple style. Mannerism is sometimes defined as the stylish style, for its emphasis of self-conscious, of artifice, of over-realistic depiction. So, ang mannerism art ay isa itong nagpapakita ng malalim na emosyon, mahabang pagpapakita na So, mannerism art ay isa itong nagpapakita ng malalim na emosyon, mahabang mga linya at mga forma na nagtataglay ng isang malikha at labis na pagkagulat. Ang mannerismo ay isang karaniwang mayroong mga elemento na nagpapakita ng pagkakaiba, pagkagulat at pagkakabalisa ng pagitan ng mga kaayusan ng mundo. Characteristic of Mannerist painting. As a whole, Mannerist painting tends to be more artificial and less naturalistic than Renaissance painting. This exaggerated in idiom and typical associated with the attributes such as emotionalism, elongated human figures, strange poses, unusual effects of skill, lighting or perspective, vivid open garish colors. So, ang Mannerist painting ay isang uri ng sining na karaniwang nagpapakita ng isang di natural na pag-uugali ng mga tao. Karaniwang itong nagpapakita ng mga labis na asal, tulad ng labis na katigasan ng muka, labis na pag-angat ng kilay at mga pagkakasunod-sunod ng hugis. Karaniwan ding nagpapakita ito ng ganap na kulay na at malalim na tono na nagbibigay ng isang malinaw na pagkakaiba sa likas na pagkayari ng mga bagay. Origin and development of Mannerism. Mannerism is an artistic style and movement that developed in Europe from the later years of High Renaissance, around the 1520 to the end of the 16th century, when Baroque started to replace it. Mannerism was born as a reaction to the harmonious classicism and naturalism of the Renaissance. So, ang origin and development of Mannerism, ito daw ay isang panahon na kinikilala ang paglabas ng mga sining na nagtatampok sa mga abstrakto o ekspresibo na mga pananaw na nakatuon sa mga pag-unlad na nagsimula sa pamagitan ng mga gawa ni Michelangelo at Raphael. Ang mga sining na mannerismo ay nagsama-sama sa espesyal na detalye, paglarawan ng mga pagkilala ng mga puno ng kulay, ang paglikha ng mga kontra-perspektibo, ang mga pagpapakita ng mga ugnayan na pagitan ng mga kulay. Ang mannerismo ay isa itong tinuturing na pagtuklas sining dahil sa pagkakaiba nito mula sa sining natin. The Mannerism reality. The Mannerism reality is an artistic movement of 16th century in Europe that focused on the individual, often eccentric artists and their works. It was a reaction against the Renaissance and was characterized by a highly stylish use of line, shape, and color. So as you can see, there is a sample of a picture of the Mannerism reality. So, Mannerism reality daw is isang paraan ng pagpapahayag ng emosyon o saloobin sa isang mas subtle na paraan. Ito ay isang paraan na pagpapahayag ng sarili sa pamamagitan ng mga tingin, kilos, salita o anumang ibang paraan na hindi direktang sinasabi. The Baroque art. The term Baroque, derived from the Portuguese barroco meaning irregular fair or stone, refers to the cultural and art movement that characterized Europe from the early 17th to mid 18th century. Baroque emphasizes dramatic, exaggerated motion and clear, easily interpreted detail. So, Baroque art means is a style or architecture, music, dance, and painting, sculpture, poetry, and other arts that flourished in Europe from the early 17th century until the 1750s. It followed Renaissance art and Mannerism and preceded to the Rococo and Neoclassical styles. The Trinity painting by Tintoretto. Jacopo Tintoretto left the indelible mark on 16th century Venetian painting and beyond. His unique approach to art making with rapid, loose, loose brush strokes and strong contrast between light and the dark deeply challenged the tradition style of the iconic master Titan Paolo Veronese and his Venetian contemporaries. So, as you can see that the example of painting of Tintoretto. Makita na to dira no nga kuan. Si Papa Jesus kay da tapos na yung mga angel mo na yung sample sa iyang painting. The three main tendencies of era. First, industrialization. The development and growth of factories and technological advance were major hallmarks of the era. This led to a shift in the way people work and live, and created a new middle class. 2. Urbanization. The migration of people from rural to urban areas increased significantly during that period. This led to the growth of sites and the emergence of large metropolitan areas. Number 3. Imperialism. The period saw the rise of powerful empires such as British and French, which sought to expand their influence around the world. This led to the colonization of many foreign countries and exploitation of their resources. Architectures, painting, and sculpture. Renaissance art, painting, sculpture, architecture produced during the 15th and 14th and 15th and 16th centuries in Europe under the combined influences of an increased awareness of nature, a revival of classical learning, and a more individualistic view of man. Thank you, and that's all my report.
I am Chinimi Bacos and I'm going to discuss the Rococo art. Now, what is Rococo art? It's a style of art and architecture that originated in France in the early 18th century and spread to the other European countries, particularly in the Germany and the Austria. The new style is characterized by its symmetry, graceful curves, elegance, and delightful new paintings of daily life and country love, which decorated the walls within these spaces. And it is characterized by its light, airy, and playful qualities, as well as its use of curves, asymmetrical balance, and pastel colors. Now, here are some of the famous Rococo artists. The Antoine Watteau painting entitled L'Enceinte de Gersaint and Francois Boucher painting The Toilet of Venus. and Jean Antoine Watteau painting, The Embarkation for Cythera. Now, Rococo art is known for its intricate and decorative nature, reflecting the elegance and leisure of 18th century European society, and it had a profound influence on interior design, art portraiture, and decorature arts, and continues to be appreciated for its ornate beauty. Now, the exteriors of Rococo building are often simple, while the interior are entirely dominated by their ornament. In palaces, grand stairways become centerpieces of offer different points of view of the decoration. The Hopkins 2014. Now it is the example of their arts, the Veiled Dame. As you can see in the picture, the Veiled Dame. Now Jean Honor Fragonard, a French, the year 1732 to 1806, was one such painter who attempted to adapt his style to the artistic change of the period, unlike Watteau. Now, Fragonard's skills was not recognized until well after his death. Fragonard is best known for his Rococo style, painting like Coquette Fix or the Fascinated Coquette, which depict on amorous encounter between a female and two males. So, mo ni siya kining nasa picture. Next is sculpture and porcelain. Religious sculpture followed in the Italian Baroque style as exemplified in the theatrical altarpiece of the Calscurci in Vienna. However, much of Rococo sculpture was lighter and offered more movement than the classical style of Louis XIV. It was encouraged by Madame de Pompadour, a mistress of Louis XIV, who commissioned many works for her chateaux and gardens. The sculpture Edme Bouchard on represented Cupid engaged in carving his darts of love from the Hercules Rococo style. The Rimgod is transformed into the soft child. The bone shattering claw becomes the heart-scathing arrows, just as a marble is so later replaced by the stucco. Etienne Maurice Falconet, the year 1716 to 1791, was another leading French sculptor during the period. The definition of sculpture is the art of creating three-dimensional form and shapes, typically by the carving, modeling, or casting various materials such as stone, wood, metal, clay, or even more modern materials like plastics. Now, porcelain is a type of ceramic materials made from a fine clay um, known as kaolin. It is fired at very high temperature, resulting in a delicate and translucent quality, often referred to as china. Now, in summary, sculpture and porcelain are distinct art forms with their own histories, techniques, and cultural significance. Sculpture explore three-dimensional forms and can convey a wide range of themes, while porcelain, prized for its delicacy and beauty, is often used for decorative and functional objects with a rich history in both China and Europe. Next is Rococo fashion. Rococo fashion was characterized by its opulence, intricate decoration, and a departure from the stiff of structured style of previous era. And also it represented an era of elegance and extravagance where clothing was used a means of self-expression and social status. The Rococo fashion was based on extravagance, elegance, refinement, and decorations. Women's fashion by 17th century was constructed by the fashion of 18th century, which is ornate and sophisticated the through the style of Rococo. The Foucault et al. 2012. This time was known as Enlightenment, which valued reason, authority. Rococo, an exuberant, playful, and elegant style of decoration and design, shifted its influence from Versailles to Paris. It was popular in the early 18th century with the robe volante, a flowing gown. However, it ended in the early 1760s due to criticism from figures like Voltaire and Jacques Francois Blondel. By the year 1785, Rococo had passed out in fashion in France, replaced by neoclassical artists like Jacques Louis David. It remained popular in the provinces and Italy until the empire style arrived the Napoleonic governments. However, it ended in the early 1760s due to criticism from figures like Voltaire and Jacques Francois Blondel. Uh, by the year 1785, Rococo had passed out fashion in France. The period saw the rise of classical music and painting, with Jacques Louis David's works becoming synonymous with a revival. Neoclassicism was most um, prominent in architecture, sculpture, and decorative arts. Now let's proceed to Neoclassicism. Neoclassicism, a revival of the classical past, began in the 18th century, encompassing various arts like painting, sculpture, theater, literature, music, and architecture. Its style is characterized by straight lines, minimal color, simplicity, and adherence to classical values. Now, the founder of modern archaeology, which is Johann Joachim Winckelmann, praised Greek architecture and inspired artists to study it. Excavations of Pompeii and Herculaneum in 1738 led to the discovery of well-preserved artifacts, sparking artistic fascination of antiquity. Artists like Jean Auguste Dominic Ingres created classically inspired works, while Wigwood, a famous English ceramic manufacturer, produced um, uh, he produced classically inspired jasperware, crameware, and black basalt. Neoclassical sculptor Jan Flaxman, he contributed to Wigwood's work, including illustration for classical literature and decorative works. In summary, Neoclassicism was a significant cultural and artistic movement that sought to revive the classical ideals of ancient Greece and Rome during the late 18th century. It had a profound impact on art, architecture, and the cultural and political landscape of the late 18th and early 19th century, and emphasizing reason, simplicity, and moral virtue. Uh, Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres, a French artist, created paintings of Oedipus and Sophocles. Wigwood, in 18th century British ceramic manufacturer, siyang nag-discover sa preserved ancient decorative arts and producing classically inspired jasperware, crameware, and black basalt with frieze-like scenes. Now, Johann Flaxman, a renowned classical sculptor, illustrator, and designer, worked for Wigwood from the year 1775. Also creating illustrations for classical literature, decorative art, and military monumentals. The period saw the rise of classical music and painting, with Jacques Louis David's work becoming synonymous with revival, neoclassicism's and most prominent architecture, sculpture, and decorative arts. Now, neoclassicism characteristics. Was a key figure in the neoclassical movement which emerged between 1990s and 1930. Neoclassical painters depicted subjects from classical literature history using somber colors and occasional brilliant highlights to convey moral narratives. Neoclassical sculpture was more written than Baroque, and architecture was more ordered, the less grandiose, resembling Greek orders of architecture. Now, French Romanticism, which spanned the approximately 1815 to 1850, was a cultural and artistic movement that emerged in France following the upheaval of the Napoleonic era, and the Restoration period. It was also characterized by a focus on emotion. Uh, their artists and writers to evoke powerful emotions and individualism, a fascination with nature, a rejection of neoclassicism, and a strong connection to political and social events of time. French Romanticism of the early to middle 19th century was a vibrant and influential cultural movement that left uh, indelible mark on French literature, art, and music. It expressed an evolving social and political consciousness of the time while championing the power of emotion and imagination. Romantic art, Dominicus Theotokos, Claude Lorraine, and Adam Elshemer were pioneers in the Romanticism style, which emerged after the French Revolution. Romanticism incorporated heroic elements from the Neoclassicism and revolutionary idealism, promoting a return to nature, humanity's goodness, uh, justice, and emotional response. Uh, Romantic art, constructed with neoclassical arts, um, restraint and universal values that influencing in the year 19th century architects building designs. Romantic art. So, mani siya ang katong mga artist katong tulo. Si Dominicos Theotokos, Claude Lorraine, and Adam Elsher. Sila ang mga pioneers in the Romanticism styles. Now origin, the French Revolution and the Congress of Vienna marked significant political crisis in Europe, highlighting the need for liberty, equality, and fraternity. Neoclassicism, a key element in neoclassical painting, was challenged by the rise of emotional intuition and individual imagination, leading to a shift from praising intellectual discipline to celebrating individual emotions and perceptions. That is origin. Now, the German Romanticism, 1880s to 1850. Kat Friedrich Skankel's Gothic Cathedral by the Water, alongside works by Julius Snorr von Karlsfeld, and Franz P4 were significant in the Germany art scene during the Romantic movement. And these artists, inspired by the Italian early Renaissance and German art of Albrecht Dürer, embrace creative intuition and imagination as the basis of art. Landscape painting was popular and romanticized, symbolizing freedom and boundlessness. And however, with the European restoration and persecution of demagogues, German Romanticism faded, leading to the Biedermeier period of late Romanticism, exemplified by works by Moritz von Schwend, Adrian Ludwig Richter, and Karl Spetzwig. Their kanang iyahang example is kaning View of the Copper Mill in Vietri by Adrian Ludwig Richter. Now, as you can see in the picture, mao ni ilahan ni kuan ni Adrian Ludwig ug ni Moritz von Schwend. Ki Adrian Ludwig Richter mo pod ni iya ning View of the Copper Mill in Vetri. While Moritz the Hagem and the Rhyme Daughters. And by the way, here are the famous classical buildings. The Buckingham Palace, London by John Nash. Then the Arc de Triomphe, Paris by Jane Chalgrin, and the Pavox Palace in Russia by Charles Cameron, and the Pantheon in Rome by Jacques Germain Swafflat. Now, Spanish Romanticism in 1810 to 30. Francisco de Goya, the undisputed leader of Romantic Spain, was known for his works of irrationality, fanta, and natural bear. His masterpieces include The 3rd of May and The Colossus. Now, it is The 3rd of May from Francis Goya. Nag-produce siya og kanang one of his greatest masterpiece, which is the 3rd of May in 1808. He became withdrawn by his black paintings, including Saturn Devouring His Son, offer insights into his personal fantasy. Now, the last one is French Romanticism in 1815 to 50. Napoleon's exile and restoration policies led to a boom in Romantic art, and dominated by Neapolitans like Jugax, David, and other ruling members of the French Academy. Romantic artists focus on portrait and history painting, not pre-painting. Now, as you can see in the picture, it is the Napoleon Crossing the Alps by David Jacques Louis. And the whirling Their voices by Jean Leon Jerome. So that's all, and thank you everyone.
So hello everyone, by the way, I'm the next reporter in our group. So let me introduce myself first. I am Trisha Hart M. Pubatora, and I am one of the reporter of Group 2. So my topic is just a continuation sa topic ni Miss Bacos earlier. So my topic is all about romanticism in England. So first, let's talk about romanticism. So romanticism is a movement in the arts and literature that originated in the late 18th century, emphasizing inspiration, subjectivity, and the primacy of the individual. So, this emancipation of color is particularly characteristic of the painting of William Turner 1775 to 1851. So, ginisik Anne William Turner kay she is the greatest of all English painters of Romanticism. The mode of his painting is created less by what painted than by how he painted, especially how he employed color and his paintbrush. Many of his canvases are painted with rapid slashes. So, ang mod sa painting na iyang gibuhat is ano lang, ang gamay rang color white kaysa sa other kuan niya paint nga iyang gibuhat. And there are also other English romantic painters like William Blake 1757 to 1827 and John Martin 1789 to 1554. So let's proceed to the impact of Romanticism. So impact of Romanticism. The Romantic style of painting stimulated the emergence of numerous schools such as the Barbizon School of Plein Air Landscapes, the Norwich School of Landscape Painters, and the Nazarenes, a group of Catholic German and Austrian painters, symbolizes like Arnold Böcklin 1827 to 1901, and the aestheticism movement. So, impact of Romanticism is inspired by the Romantic movements. The Barbizon painters nevertheless turned away from the melodramatic picture sequences of established Romantic landscapes painters as well as from the classical academic tradition. So let's proceed to the greatest Romantic paintings. So works of Romanticism hang in many of the best art museums around the world. So here is a short selected list of works. So the first one is the Carl Friedrich Schinkel 1787 to 1841, Gothic Cathedral by the Water 1813, Staatliche Museen zu Berlin. So the next picture is the John Constable 1776 to 1837, or the Wayne 1821, National Gallery, London. And the other one is the GMW Turner 1775 to 1851, or the Fighting Temeraire 1838 in the National Gallery, London. And there are also lots of greatest romantic paintings like The Slave Ship 1840, Museum of Fine Arts, Boston, Steamboat of Harbour's Mouth 1842, Tate, London, Rain Steam Speed, The Great Western Railway 1844 in National Gallery, London, Caspar David Friedrich 1774 to 1840, and Winter Landscape C 1811, National Gallery, London. And there are other lots of greatest paintings that I didn't list it. So let's proceed to the art of realism. So the term realism was promoted by the French novelist Jean Fleury during the 1840s, although it began in earnest 1855, with an exposition by the French painter Gustave Courbet 1819 to 77, after one of his paintings, which is the Artist's Studio, had been rejected by the World Fair in Paris. So, because of that, Courbet set up his own marquee nearby and issued a manifesto to accompany his personal exhibition. And it was entitled Realisme. So, this just emphasizes to realism. So, characteristics, which is the genre and the subject matter. So the style of realist painting spread to almost all genres, including history paintings, portraits, genre painting, and landscapes. So that painting is a sample of the style of the realist landscape painting. So let's proceed to the subject matter. So favorite subject matter for realist artists include genre scenes of rural and urban working class life, scenes of street life, caves and nightclubs, as well as increasing frankness in the treatment of the body, nudity, and sensual subjects. So that picture above is the painting. Intimate scenes from daily life are almost invariably the subject of the genre painting. So the elimination of imaginative content and of idealization focuses attention upon the shrewd objection of types, costumes, and settings. So next is the famous 19th century realist paintings. So the main school of realism during the 19th century, including the English figurative school, the French school, which is led by Gustave Courbet, the Russian school, which is led by Delia Repin, and the German school, which is led by Adolf von Menzel. So in addition, numerous artists produce paintings in the realist style, including the Romantic Tudor Géricault, which is his Asylum portraits, and the Impressionist Edgar Degas, which is his ballet pictures. So the first picture, it is the Asylum portrait of Géricault, and the second one is the example of ballet pictures of Edgar Degas. So realist artist. Realist artists strongly associated with the 19th century movement include Jean-François Millet, 1814-75, Gustave Courbet, 1819-77, Honore Daumier, 1808-79. However, many more were influenced by realism without allowing it to dominate their work. Another example is Jules Bastien Lepage, 1848-1884, whose naturalism was a strong influence on the conservative strand of Impressionist painting. So the realist style was taken up and adopted by French Impressionists like Edgar Degas. So this is the example of the realist style, and it is entitled The Absentee Drinker, 1830 to 1900s. So realism in the 20th century. So let's proceed to the short introduction to a selection of realist schools and themes in fine arts, painting, and sculpture. It is according to Encyclopedia Art History. So the first is the Verismo 1890s to 1800s. So this Italian term implies extreme raw realism without any interpretation. So kining Verismo is it describes a style of opera popular during the 1880s, 1890s, and early 1900s, which saw French, Italian, and German composites emulating literature by incorporating more realistic subject, dramatic strategies, and musical materials. The second one is the Ashcan School, 1908 to 1913. So the Ashcan School was a small group of painters who strove to chronicle everyday life in New York City during the pre-war period. So, kining Ashcan School, some painters ani na school kay they want to create a new kind of art rooted in the raw, visceral day-to-day reality of the city. So the next one is the Precisionism 1920. So, an American painting movement which depicted urban or industrial landscapes often in a cubist futurist matter. So, kining precisionism is more smooth, sharply defined painting style used by several American artists in representation canvases executed primarily during 1920s. So the fourth one is the social realism. So it is a naturalistic style of realism which focuses exclusively on social issues and everyday hardships. So the term social realist describes the urban American scene artists who worked during the Depression era. So the fifth one is the Surrealism, 1920s to 1930s. So Surrealism was founded in Paris in 1924 following the publication of André Breton's Manifesto. So based on the psychoanalytical ideas of Sigmund Freud, Surrealism sought to release the creative potential of the unconscious mind. Nang emerge ni siya sa Europe in the 1920s as a reaction to the atrocities of World War I and the cultural political values of the time. And then we have the American Contemporary Realism, 1916 or early 1970s. So this term describes the relatively straightforward realistic approach to representation taken by artists in the post-abstract era. And the last one we have the Cynical Realism, which is in China, 1990s. The Cynical Realism it is a satirical style of Chinese contemporary painting which appeared in the 1990s following the suppression of the Tiananmen Square demonstrations. Cynical realists borrowed imagery from various traditions. So, the next is the key features. So the Impressionists loosened their brushworks and lightened their palettes to include pure, intense colors, and they abandoned traditional linear perspective and avoided the clarity of forms that had previously served to distinguish the more important elements of the picture from the lesser ones. So for this reason, many unfinished appearance and seemingly amateurish quality. So in summary, Impressionism describes a style of painting developed in France during the mid to late 19th century. So, characterization of the style includes small, visible brush strokes and offer the bare impressions of form and blended color and an emphasis on the accurate depiction of natural light. So next we have the exhibitions in Paris in the Salon des Refuses. So this means in 1863 at the official yearly art salon, the all-important event of the French art world, a large number of artists were not allowed to participate, leading to public outcry. The same year, the Salon des Refuses, which is the Salon of the Refuse, was formed in response to allow exhibition of works by artists who had previously been refused entrance to the official salon. So, the term Salon des Refuses refers to an art exhibition held in Paris in 1863 to show paintings that had been rejected by the selection committee of the Paris Salon, which is the official annual showcase of French art. So kini exhibition of Paris in the Salon des Refuses kay diri nila i-represent ang katong mga paintings nga na-reject during the selection committee of the Paris Salon. So Edouard Manet and the Painting Revolution. So Edouard Manet was among the first and most important innovators to emerge in the public exhibition scene in Paris. He also started to focus on images of everyday life, such as scenes in cafes, boudoirs, and out in the street. So that painting is one of the painting painted by Edouard Manet, which is entitled Olympia. It is the first exhibited at the 1565 Paris Salon, which shows a nude woman lying on a bed, brought flowers by a servant. So Olivia was a model by Victorine Morent, an Olympia servant by the Ari Maud Lauer. So let's proceed to the characteristics of Post-Impressionism. So the first one is the emotional symbolism. So as Fry explained, Post-Impressionists believe that a work of art should not revolve around style, process, or aesthetic approach. Instead, it should be placed emphasis on symbolism, communicating messages from the artist's own subconscious. So, example aning kuan emotional symbolism is kining picture na diha nakatatak. So, this is entitled Pyramid of Skulls 1901 and it is by Paul Cézanne. So the second one is a evocative color. So unlike the Impressionists who strive to capture natural lights, effect and tonality, saturated hues, multicolored shadows, and rich ranges of color are evident in most post-impressionist paintings, providing the artist's innovative and imaginative approach to representation. So, ang example ani niya is kaning picture na beside sa kuan explanation. So that is the Yellow Christ by Paul Gauguin. So the last one we have the distinctive brush stroke. So adding texture and a sense of depth to a work of art, this mark also points to the painterly qualities of the piece, intended to be the realistic presentation of the subject. So, ang example ani is kining nasa kilid Japan which is The Brothers by Paul Cézanne. So, let's proceed to the Neo-Impressionism. So, Neo-Impressionism, it is a movement in French painting of the late 19th century that reacted against the empirical realism of Impressionism, relying on systematic calculation and scientific theory to achieve predetermined visual effects. So the Neo-Impressionists applied the scientific optical principles of light and color to create strictly formalized compositions. And also Neo-Impressionism was led by Georges Seurat. So the last one we have the theory of Neo-Impressionism. So Neo-Impressionism is characterized by the use of the divisionist technique, or often probably but correctly called pointillism, or a term Paul Signac repudiated. So by the way, this is just a short summary sa theory about the New Impressionism. So divisionism attempts to put impressionist painting of light in color on a scientific basis by using an optical mixture of colors. Instead of mixing colors in a palette, which reduces intensity, the primary color components of each color were placed separately on the canvas in tiny dabs, so they moved towards white. So this method gave greatly luminosity. So Neo-Impressionism, so it is the name given to post-impressionist work of Georges Seurat and Paul Signac and their followers, who, inspired by optical theory, painted using tiny adjacent dabs of primary color to create the effect of light. And that contains my report. Thank you for listening.
Hi, good day. It's me, Idmar Hontado. For today, we are talk about from the age of symbolism to expressionism. From the age of symbolism to expressionism, it is the art in 20th century like the social environment in which it was produced underwent a process of constant and rapid change. Painting in our Europe no longer had to represent external reality through a series of pictorial convention. Historical events could be accurately recorded instead to the newer media of photography and film. Strauss Electra represented a move toward expressionism and transformation of late 19th century. Chromatic tonality, this trend was continued to Schoenberg's Erwartung. Bergschwözik is then discussed as a symbol of the oppressed and the peak of expressionism. Next is symbolism. As opposed to expressionism, in which the emphasis was on the reality of the created paint surface itself, symbolism was both an artistic and literary movement that suggested ideas through symbol and emphasized the meaning behind the forms, lines, shape, and color. Symbolists could take the ineffable such dreams and visions and give it form. Symbolism is the visual arts had its sources in early 19th century Romanticism, emphasis on the imagination rather than reason and the themes. The writer Charles Baudelaire's Celeste Flower Domal, 1857. William Blake. The aestheticism of the pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood in England and the poetic allegorical, moody, dream words created by Edward Burne-Jones. Dante Gabriel Rossetti and Pierre Puvis de Cabens. Symbolism was in many ways a reaction against the moralism, rationalism, and materialism of the 1880s. This fin-de-siècle period was a period of malice, a sickness of dissatisfaction. Artists need to go beyond naturalism in art and other forms of art and entertainment such as ballet and cabaret. Symbolism means as escape, the use of symbols to represent ideas or qualities. Symbolist theory and Albert Auer. Albert Auer, 1865-1892, French symbolist, writer, and art critic, formulated a coherent symbolist aesthetic theory in art subscribed to by Van Gauguin and other synthetists. Although his theory exists in piecemeal form in his critical writing, he died before he could consolidate and publish it. Symbolism is influenced visual and field of criticism. Albert Auer in 1891 wrote in what became essentially a symbolist manifesto that art should be ideative, symbolist, synthetic, subjective, and decorative. Ideistic or ideative, expressing an idea. Ito yung proseso sa pagbuo ng idea. Symbolist, since it expresses that idea through form. Synthetic, since it expresses those form and sign in a way that is generally understandable. Subjective, since the object is only an indication of an idea perceived by the subject. And the last, decorative, since decorative painting is at once an art that is synthetic, symbolist, and ideative. Next we have concept and styles. Concept and styles is the period in which the symbolist work was marked by confusion regarding moral, spiritual, religious, and intellectual attitude. The idea of spiritual was very important of the development of symbolism and reflected the anti-materialist philosophies that were concerned with mysticism. English writer Oscar Wilde's work and the French writers Joris Kyle Huysmans are rebels against nature, 1884. Symbolists reflect dissidence. The most important art of symbolists is Death and the Mask by James Ensor. Art Nouveau. Ornamental styles of art flourished between 1890-1910 throughout Europe and United States. It was a deliberate attempt to create a new style free of initiative historicism that dominated much in 19th century. Art and design. It developed first in England, soon in European, and it was called Jugendstil. In Germany, it is Stil and Australian style, floral in style, liberty, style, and modernista in Spain. The term Art Nouveau was coined by a gallery in Paris exhibited much of this work. History of Art Nouveau. The term Art Nouveau stemmed from name of the Parisian art gallery called La Maison d'Art Nouveau, owned by avant-garde art collector Siegfried, being 1838-1905. The gallery's reputation and fame was considered boosted installation of modern furniture, tapestries, and object art at the 1900 exposition. And that's all. Thank you.
Hi everyone, it's me Almanito Gabutero and we're going to discuss about application. Application. Art Nouveau design were most common glassware, jewelry, and others decorative like ceramic. Ang Art Nouveau di ay mo'y kasagara gihimong alahas ug uban pang dekorasyon sama sa ceramic. But the style was also applied to textile, household, silver, domestic, cigarettes, furniture, and lighting, as well as during posture art, painting, and hooks, illustration. But the best example are designs created by Leon Bax on 1866 to 1924 and Alexander Binios 1870 to 1964. Daily and Ballets Russia's Art Nouveau architectural design made a broad use of exposed iron and larger irregular piece of glasses. Famous Art Nouveau artists. The two greatest graphic artists of the Art Nouveau movement were the French lithographer Julius Cheret noong 1836 to 1932, whose invention of three-set chromolithography made of Art Nouveau, further art fabulous and press photographer and designer. Alphonse Mucha 1860 to 1939, who celebrate epitomize the Art Nouveau idiom. Emile Gale of France and Louis Comfort Tilly of United States were famous for their colorful Art Nouveau glassware. As were the English artists Aubrey Beardsley and Wider Crane for their wonderful Art Nouveau drawings. Si Brindasley and Walter Karen diay no may pinakanindot og drawing. And other famous artists involved in new art dayon napoy na involved nga mga famous nga bagong artists included the French jewelry designer René Lecquoy, the Vance painter Gustave Klein, the Polish street optical designer and state glass artist Stanislaw and the Scottish architect and designer Craggs Rennie Mackintosh 1868 to 1925, leader of the Glasgow School. Si Rennie Mackintosh ay may leader sa Glasgow School. Legacy and influence of Art Nouveau. Art Nouveau promoted a more whispered adoption of beautiful design. It did not diminish the value of the machine or fast production, as the artist and craft movement did, but instead took advantage of many technological innovation for the late 19th century. Thirdly, Art Nouveau is viewed as important bridge between neoclassicism and modernism, and a number of its movements are on the UNESCO World Heritage List, notable by historic century of Riga, limited with over 750 buildings in the Art Nouveau style. Fabius is a style of painting that previous in France around the turn of the 20th century. Preview artist is used pure brilliant color against applied straight from the paint tubes to create a sense of an explosion on the caves. Woman with the Hat by Henri Matisse. The leader of the group was Henri Matisse. Siya day mo'y leader sa si Henri Matiwan day mo'y leader who had arrived at the Fab style after experimenting with the various poses in Mathisides lead him to reject traditional leadings, third-dimensional piece and seek instead a new picture defined by movement of color accessibility of his famous Woman with the Hat 1905 at the accessibility his painting break stroke of color blues, greens and reds from an organic Woman with the Hat by Henri Matisse. Expensive view of woman.
Good day everyone. My name is Erizame Kilala. My topic for today is about characteristics of Fauvism. The characteristics of Fauvism include a radical use of unnatural colors that separated color from its usual representation and realistic role, giving new emotional meaning to the colors, creating a strong, unified work that appears. So, ang paggamit ng mga hindi natural na kulay na naghiwalay sa kulay, na lumikha ng isang malakas na pinag-iisang gawa na lumitaw ay kabilang sa Fauvism. So, nagpapakita ng mga individual na expression at emotional ng pintor kapag lumikha ng mga painting batay sa mga teorya kung ano ang hitsura ng pagpipinta sa mga bagay na kinakatawan ayon sa paglitaw nito sa kalikasan. So this is the example of Fauvism by the gardener Maurice de Vlaminck. Next is Expressionism. Expressionism is an artistic style in which the artist seeks to depict not objective reality but rather the subjective emotions and response that object and events arouse within a person. So, ang expressionism ay isang artistikong estilo kung saan hinahangad ng pintor ang mga bagay at pangyayari sa pumupukaw sa loob ng isang tao. So, ang term na expressionist ay naisip na likha noong 1910 ng Czech art historian na si Antonin Matichik na nilayon nitong tukuyin ang kabaliktaran ng expressionismo. Next is the advent of expression in Germany. Although it includes various artists and styles, expressionism first emerged in 1905 when a group of four German architecture students who desired to become painters Ernst Kirchner, Franz Blei in the city of Dresden. So this is the Dresden Street by Ernst Ludwig Kirchner. Next is the famous expressionist artist, Max Bickmann. Max Bickmann ay isang German na pintor na laban sa expressionist movement at marami sa kanyang mga painting ang inilalarawan bilang expressionist. James Ensor. Siya ang pintor na may impluwensya sa kilusang expressionista sa Germany. Oskar Kokucha ay isang Austrian artist na ang likhang sining ay ipinakita sa German magazine. Ang bagyo na expressionism ay naging isang tunay na kilusan ng sining. August Macke. Siya ay isang nangungunang miyembro ng expressionist group na Blue Reader sa Germany at nagpinta rin siya ng ilang abstract art. Franz Marc ay isang founding member ng Blue Reader group na si Franz Marc ay isa sa mga pinuno ng expressionist movement. Edward Munch. Kilala sa isang simbolista at ekspresyonismong Munch sa kanyang sikat na pagpipinta ng hiyawan. Egan Schiele. Isang maagang nagpatibay ng expressionism, si Egan ay namatay sa murang edad ng 28. Next is decline of the movement. The decline of expressionism was hastened by the vagueness of its longing for a better world, by its use of highly poetic language and in general, the intensely personal and inaccessible nature of its mode of representation. So, ang paghina ng ekspresyonismo ay pinabilis ng malabo ng pananabik nito para sa isang mas mabuting mundo sa pamamagitan ng paggamit dito ng mataas na patulas sa wika. So, that's all my report. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, especially to our art appreciation instructor, Ms. Michelle Cano. By the way, I am Gerald Rodriguez Sumabong, and I am the first reporter of Lesson 4, Cubism to Installation Art. Introduction. Braque, on seeing Picasso's Les Demoiselles at his studio, intensified his similar explorations and simplification of form. He made a series of landscape paintings in the summer of 1908, including houses at El Estac, in which trees and mountains were rendered as shaded cubes and pyramids, resembling architectural. Cubism was introduced to the public with Braque's one-man exhibition at the new Henry Canwiller's Gallery on the Rue Vignon in 1908. It was this exhibit that led French art critic Louis Vauxelles to describe them as bizarreries cubics, thus giving the movement its name. The experiments of Picasso and Braque owe much to Canwiller, who was the major supporter of their work. Picasso and Braque were both quite poor in 1907, and Canwiller offered to buy their works as they painted them, thus freeing thus freeing the artist from worrying about placing patrons or receiving negative reviews. After the 1908 exhibit, with few exceptions, the two artists exhibit only in Kahnweiler's gallery. Cubism. Cubism was truly revolutionary style of modern art developed by Pablo Picasso and George Braque. It was the first style of abstract art which evolved at the beginning of the 20th century in response to a world that was changing with unprecedented speed. The Cubists challenged conventional forms of presentation, such as perspective, which have been the role since the Italian Renaissance. Their aim was to develop a new way of seeing which reflected to the modern age. Cubist painters were not bound to copying form, texture, color, and space. Instead, they presented a new reality painting that depicted radically. Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. The painting of Picasso in 1907 presaged the new style. Cézanne art. Perspective is rendered through color with a warm radish browns advancing, the tall blues receding. The Cubist vision. They wanted to introduce the idea of relativity, how the artist perceived and selected elements from the subject, fusing both their observations and memories in the one concentrated image. Analytical and synthetic Cubism. Cubism had two distinct phases. Analytical Cubism, early phase, which lasted until about 1912. Here, the artists analyzed the subject from many different viewpoints and reconstructed it with a geometric framework, the overall effect of which was to create an image that evoke a sense of the subject. These fragmented images were unified by the use of subdued, unlimited palette of colors. Around 1912, the styles of Picasso and Braque were becoming predictable. Their images had grown so similar that their paintings of this period are often difficult to tell apart. Their work was increasingly abstract and less recognizable as the subject of their titles. Cubism was running out of creative steam. An attempt to revitalize the styles and pull it back from total abstraction, Picasso began to glue printed images from the real world onto the surface of his still life. His painting Still Life with Chair Canning was the first example of this collage technique, and it opened the door for himself and other artists the second phase of the Cubist styles, which is the synthetic Cubism or artifactory. Cubism and beyond. Cubism was born in France but immigrated across Europe and integrated with the artistic consciousness of several countries. It emerged as Futurism in Italy, Vorticism in England, Suprematism and Constructivism in Russia, and Expressionism in Germany. Futurism. In early 20th century, artistic movements centered in Italy emphasized the dynamism, speed, energy, and power of the machine and the vitality, change, and restlessness of modern life. Futurism was first announced on February 20, 1909, when the Paris newspaper Le Figaro published a manifesto by the Italian poet and editor Filippo Tommaso Marinetti. Marinetti's manifesto inspired a group of young painters in Milan to apply futurist ideas to the visual arts. Buscioni also became interested in sculpture, publishing manifesto on the subject in the spring 1913. He is considered to have most fully realized his theories and to sculptures, Development of Battle in Space 1912, and Unique Forms of Continuity in Space 1913. Abstract or non-objective art. Non-objective art is a type of abstract or non-representational art. It ends to be geometric and does not represent specific objects, people, or other subjects found in the natural world. Wassily Kandinsky, one of the best known non-objective artists. The term non-objective was first used by the Russian constructivist artist Alexander Ludchenko in the year 1891 to 1956. Kazimir Malevich, 1878 to 1935. He is the inventor of suprematism and who wrote and referring to non-objectivity in 1919. Other famous non-objective artists. The earliest pioneers of non-objective art were Kandinsky, 1866 to 1944, Piet Mondrian, 1872 to 1944, and Theo van Doesburg, 1883 to 1931, Mikhail Larionov, 1881 to 1964, and Natalia Goncharova, 1881 to 1962, Kazimir Malevich, and Alexander Rodchenko. Style. Non-objective paintings typically uses geometric motifs on shallow picture plane. As general rule, no use is made of linear perspective to create illusion of pictorial depth. Neither is impasse employed to create textural effects. Dadaism. Dadaism was an artistic and literary movement that began in Zurich, Switzerland. It arose a reaction to World War I and the nationalism that many thought had led to the war. History. Switzerland was neutral during World War I with limited censorship, and it was in Zurich that Hugo Ball and Amy Hennings founded the Cabaret Voltaire on February 5, 1916 in the backroom of a tavern on Spiegelgasse in a seedy section of the city. In July that year, the first Dada evening was held at which Ball read the first manifesto. The term Dada is colloquial French term for the haber horse, yet it also echoes the first word of a child, and this suggestion of childishness and absurdity appealed to the group. The aim of Dada art and activities was both to help to stop the war and to vent frustration with the nationals and bourgeois convention that had led to it. Reception, downfall, and dissemination of Dadaist idea. The bold of new approaches of the Dadaists stirred controversy within contemporary culture. Duchamp was the first artist to use a ready-made, and his choice of an urinal was guaranteed to challenge and offend even his fellow artists. Dadaism gripped audiences into the 1920s, but the movement as a whole was destined to crumble. Surrealism. The Surrealist movement started in Europe in the 1920s after World War I, with its nucleus in Paris. Its roots were found in Dada, but it was less violent and more statistically based. Surrealism was first the work of poets and writers. Dale, 1986. The French poet André Breton is known as the Pope of the Surrealism. Surrealism is defined as psychic automatism in its pure state by which we propose to express verbally, in writing or any other manner, the real process of thought. The dictation of thought and the absence of any control exercised by reason and outside any aesthetic or moral concerns. Leslie, 1997. In other words, the general idea of surrealism is nonconformity. Surrealists strongly embraced the ideas of Sigmund Freud. Freud inspired many surrealists, but two different interpretations of his idea led to two different types of surrealists. First, automatist surrealism. It is focused their work more on feeling and were less investigative. Second, veristic surrealism also believed that the language of the subconscious world was in the form of image. Surrealist technique. A number of specific techniques were devised by the surrealists to evoke the psychic response. Among these were frottage, means rubbing with graphite or over wood or other grain substances, and grattage means strapping the canvas. Concept and styles. Surrealism shared much of the anti-rationalism of Dada, the movement out of which it grew. The original Parisian Surrealism used art as a reprieve from violent political situations and to address the unease they felt about the world's uncertainties. The rise and decline of the Surrealism. Through Surrealism originated in the France. Strains of it can be identified in art throughout the world, particularly in the 1930s and 1940s. Many artists were swept into its orbit as increasing political upheaval and a second global war encouraged the first that human civilization was in a state of crisis and collapse. The immigration of many surrealists to the Americans during World War II spread their ideas further. And that's all my report. Next will be discussed by my co-group mates. Thank you.
Good day everyone. So today I'm discussing about minimalist painters. Among the prominent minimalist painters, one of the earliest was Ellsworth Kelly 1923 to 2015. His works feature hard-edged, precise borders between blocks of color, active first in the middle 1950s. He predates the clear establishment of minimalism. Some of the most prominent minimalist artists were sculptors, people like Sol Lewitt and Donald Judd. The latter began his art career as a painter and art critic in the 1940s. One of the most important minimalist painters is Frank Stella. In the late 1950s, he caught the immediate attention of the art world with his series of black paintings, monochromatic paintings with uniform geometric lines created in bands of black paint. So as you can see in the picture is black na siya, tapos na siya mga geometric lines. So kani siyang paint gi-predict ni Frank Stella. So next is conceptual art, a modern form of contemporary art which gives priority to an idea presented by visual means that are themselves secondary to the idea. Conceptual art, while having no intrinsic financial value, convey a powerful message and thus has served a vehicle for socio-political comment, as well as a broad challenge to the tradition of work of art being crafted unique object. The ideas behind this form of visual art were explored by Marcel Duchamp, 1887 to 1968, the so-called father of conceptual art. So si Marcel Duchamp is mo siya ang father of conceptual art. Although the term was first used by Edward Kenholz 1927 to 94 in the late 1950s. So next is characteristics. Conceptual art is all about ideas and meaning, rather than works of art, paintings, sculptures, other precious objects. It is characterized by its use to text as well as imagery, along with a variety of ephemeral typically everyday materials and found objects. So, ang characteristics is mao ni siya ang everyday materials and a found object. So, next is conceptual art, artists and their works. One of the famous example of conceptual art is Portrait of Iris Clerd by Robert Rauschenberg, which is a telegram sent to the Gallery Iris Clerd. So next is photorealism. Photorealism, also called superrealism, is an American art movement that began in 1960s, taking photography as its inspiration. Photorealists typically projected a photograph image onto a canvas and then used an airbrush to reproduce the effect of a photo printed on glossy paper. So kaning photorealism is nakaprint siya sa glossy paper. Next is characteristics of photorealism. First is it complicates the idea of realism by merging the real with the unreal to some extent. Second is photorealist artists mostly emphasize that their works are not forms of social commentaries. Third is photorealist artists are dependent on high-resolution photographs in accomplishing their works. Fourth is light and the interaction of light with on surfaces are among the main concerns of photorealist artists. And the last is photorealist artists, like other practitioners of pop art, have reintroduced the primacy of process and careful planning. So, kani siya is kanang mga practitioners pa dapat makabalo na sa mga primacy o sa kanang careful nga pagplan sa pagbuhat sa photorealism. So next is installation art. Installation art is the term of works, room size or larger, in which the whole space is considered a single unified artwork. Installation art developed in the 20th century. It grew out of artists working in the 1950s and 1960s who focused on conceptual art, which is art based on ideas rather than aesthetic qualities of finished works. So kaning installation art is nag-focus siya sa mga ideas dili sama sa kanang mga nag-focus siya sa mga aesthetic nga qualities. So kaning installation art is ga-focus rin siya sa mga ideas. So characteristics of installation art. Most installation art has a certain elements in common. Artists often create installation in mixed media because they are large. Most installations are site specific. They are created to be placed into and around a specific space, like a larger gallery in a modern art museum. Installation art is about the experience of the person immersed in it. By its nature, installation art serves a rebuttal to the monetary focus often placed on art. Next is types of installation. Installation art ranges from the very simple to the very complex. It can be gallery-based, computer-based, electronic-based, web-based. The possibilities are limitless and depend entirely upon the artist's concepts and aims. So next is installation art in the Philippines, consisting of strong Malay and Chinese influence as well as those Spanish and American colonization and the effect of American globalization. Manila has developed into Southeast Asia's most progressive art hub. Currently, many old buildings are being turned into galleries and alternative spaces. However, with all of this development, Manila's contemporary art scene is far from its peak or exhaustion. So as you can see in the picture is mo ni siya ang example sa installation art in the Philippines. And other installation artists are first is Lou Lim, second Hannah Petition, and fourth is Isabel Gaunides. Kelizan. That's all. Thank you.